What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Soccer Wise. MLS playoffs have begun. What a weekend it was of action. What a week we've got coming up. David Goss and Tommy Scoops with you here. Tom, I had to slide my mic over to get my Soccer Wise logo showing from my shirt. I'm feeling pretty fresh on a Monday morning. Little late night MLS on Sunday. It felt good, though. The two games they were the most competitive games of the weekend, you could argue, although Atlanta stayed alive. I went to an Inter Miami watch party where I went to an Inter Miami bar to watch the game, my first time. And it was cool. It's a little tough when the World Series is going up right against it. But I got a couple chants. I heard a couple chants, and shout out to, man, I do not know the name of the brewery that put the game on for me.
When you were like, we were joking in the chats of like, hey, like, are we gonna go to a bar to watch a game? Like a couple of different people, and it's just like, dude, like for people in New York, it's like, well, World Series game 1 is on tonight. I think it's gonna be a little tough to get a TV on, like Apple TV for an MLS playoff game.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that you found it, and I want to hear all of this.
La Tropical was the name of the brewery, so shout out to La Tropical.
Was the energy bumping, or was it just kind of like subdued? Like, what was the vibe there?
It was medium. It's a home game, so in theory, most of the big fans are at the game. Which changed things a bit. I'd say there was like 20 to 30 Inter Miami fans, jerseys everywhere. I mean, everyone's wearing Messi and pink all the time. Like half the people walked in and my wife goes, you think they're a fan or you think they just are wearing pink? And it's like, you have no idea when you're down here, especially I believe it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So go donate and do things. And there is a lot of energy around that. Like our building, everything is pink right now. And I'm like, look at these fans stoked for the first round of 3-game series of the MLS playoffs. And I'm pretty sure none of them know it's even occurring. So it was solid. It was a cool experience. I will probably try and do it again for the second game now that that's an away game and sort of see what the feeling is and whatnot. I had the last second inkling. I was like, maybe I'll go. I'm just like not a drive to stadium person. It's a tough experience for me. But I'll tell you this, Tom. Karl Anthony Towns and Josh Hart are in the Kaseya Center on Wednesday night. You better believe I'm taking the Metro Mover there. Free Metro Rail to get to the game, and I will be in the building. MSG South, this is what we do. We dominate, and I'm hyped for that.
Dude, I'm so jealous of that. It's going to be so much fun.
The people that I most associate with, New Yorkers in Florida, we are an existence of a human being, and now I'm getting looped in, which is great. I got a text from someone this weekend that goes, you moved to Florida? You're just accelerating your retirement? And I'm like, yeah, I just didn't want to wait any longer. You got to get there at some point. And Andrew Vizano so kindly comments on my prison room that is currently my studio. Yeah, I think I went to 14 antique decor and furniture stores this weekend looking for stuff.
And you came back with one on air.
Isn't it great though? How perfect.
No, but you went to so many stores. This is all I got.
Yeah.
This is all
and the batteries are corroded into the back, so you can never turn it on. So it'll never light up. So except this reality and what we do. Okay. Tom, we have a big show for everyone. Obviously, we've got the playoffs. So we've got 4 series that have already occurred this weekend, starting on Friday night. And then we've got 4 that are still to kick off. 2 coming up tonight, and then 2 coming up on Tuesday night. So we'll talk about all of that going forward. And then you're like, all right, well, these teams are eliminated, so I don't have to talk about these teams anymore for a little while. False, because Tommy Scoops is bringing the news. We've got Bruce Arena to San Jose reports. We've also got Nico Estevez officially taking over as Austin FC after you had it first. Austin followed you, like classic Austin, right? They thought they get to say their own news. No, Tom tells you who you hired as coach. And Pam Oduka, my favorite, who you just broke, is headed to USL to be the head coach of Phoenix Rising.
Yes, indeed. Very, very happy for. I think that's a super interesting one. That's fun. And former Canadian Premier League Coach of the Year will depart Charlotte after the season.
We are officially a Phoenix Rising podcast now. Joe Larry will become the new host.
Yeah, Joe,
of this show. He broadcasts for Phoenix Rising, and he is a Phoenix native. So you can go to follow his coverage. Of course, always be going to Backheeled anyway for all your MLS, USL, NWSL, national team coverage as well. So we've got a big one. You did break a story about Kevin De Bruyne. We did that on Friday's show because you joined me for the mailbag for that one. So go back and listen to that if you'd like to. And then I did an interview, 40 or so minutes, with Miguel Lopez, who's FC Porto's U17 coach and works with a tactical periodization organization under the guy Victor Fraud, who invented it and made it famous under Jose Mourinho and all of that as well. So you can go listen to that episode. The mailbag's at the beginning. We talked schedule change as well off Paul Tenorio's reporting and some future rule changes potentially in the beginning of that episode, along with the Kevin De Bruyne news in San Diego. So you can go listen to that if you want to. Before we get into the show, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but the sad news that former Philadelphia Union 2 goalkeeper Holden Trent has passed away this weekend. Everyone, it feels like in the soccer community, hurting when we lose one of our own. Really sad. You can go, I would recommend go watch Marlon LeBlanc's post-game interview after Philadelphia Union 2's game, talking about what it meant to the team, how they dealt with it, and what they want to do to try and keep pushing his name and his memory along. So our condolences go to him or go to his family, go to the Philadelphia Union family, and on the entire soccer community overall here in North America. And the Philadelphia Union 2 won that game. So they are headed to, I believe, the conference finals in MLS Next Pro as the playoffs there roll on. And we continue in Major League Soccer. So let's start with the 4 games we have seen so far. Started on Friday night with that Miami-Atlanta game and then rolled all the way through to last night. 4 series, Tom, 4 home teams, 4 victories, no shootouts either, 4 in regulation. Does that mean anything to you? Does that prove anything to you coming out the gates?
I mean, I am always looking for confirmation that the regular season really matters and every point matters, because you know how it goes. This year it can be a slog, and when so many teams make the playoffs and then there's a best of 3 round 1, it's like it starts to lose value when it's all this, right? So like I'm all for any time that we can use confirmation bias to say, yeah, this is it. But I think for me, this has a little bit less to do with home field advantage and more to do with these teams were very clearly the better teams. Like, I think the only one where you couldn't say very clearly was Orlando and Charlotte, because that was the 4-5 one that's supposed to be closer. But, like, I don't care what the game's played at Atlanta-Miami. Like, Miami should be winning that game. So I think it's more for me that the better teams won rather than a home field advantage.
And the better teams winning, home field advantage, whatever you want to call it, you want the regular season to have mattered, that the teams that deserve to move forward. And I think that's what we saw over the course of this weekend. I didn't think Miami was great, and we'll talk about these games. I didn't think LAFC were great, but the advantage of being at home or the advantage of being the more talented team, whatever happened, we saw come out in that first game. If you had to, right now, pick, do you think that continues? Do you think we get back on the show on Thursday? We'll be back on Thursday, by the way, to review all the playoffs. And we're talking about 8 home teams that won their first game, whether it's shootout or not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like that's really possible. Like I will say, Cincy, NYCFC, Seattle, Houston, plus the Charlotte Orlando game that already happened. Those were the 3 series that I think could be tossed ups in round 1. So again, we're 4-0 right now for the home teams, and I could see that going through again.
Interesting.
So, and Real Salt Lake, Minnesota, that's going to be close too. So
yeah, my guess
gotta assume just law of averages, one of these away teams.
That's what I was going to say. And as you said, we're going into the more competitive ones, right? Yeah. We're getting away from the 1-8 seeds, and we're getting into the 4-5s and the 3-6s, which all feel a little bit closer and feel a little bit more competitive. So my guess is it wouldn't be. But at the same time, if you come out saying 6 of 8 home teams won, you're saying, in terms of format, you've got excitement, the potential for upsets, and you've got the fact that the teams have earned something over the course of the season. And then, of course, so starting Friday night, we move into the next round of games. Now you start to see the home teams for the lower seeds come. Can they protect home field advantage? Can they push it to games 3? And if they do they pick up momentum there and all that type of stuff? So I think it's going to get really interesting now coming forward over the next few days. Let's start with that opening game. Brad Guzan was a monster.
Oh my God.
Miami beat Atlanta 2-1. It was, from an XG point of view, 2.7 to 0.76 in favor of Miami at home. I said I didn't think Miami was great because I didn't think they created a ton of high leverage chances, and I didn't think they pulled apart Atlanta's defense as I expected them to. But they've got Luis Suarez, they've got Diego Gomez, they've got Messi, they've got all that talent. And Tom, in the end, you saw them start their playoff run for the first time with the victory.
Yeah, so again, that's all that matters. And again, at the end of the day, they did create a lot of chances. What I will say is, I don't think like Messi was maybe bad would be too strong. I don't think he
Yeah.
was very good, right? Like so, that's not going to happen many times, if at all, again for the playoffs, right? Like so, I think that's what you look at if you're Miami about like, hey, this should have been more comfortable than it was. Whatever, all these things aligned, and again, Brad Guzan being man of the match in this game, I don't think is something that was hugely expected. I think Guzan is an incredible career. He's not the same guy he was when he first got to Atlanta, right? Like this is just normal stuff. So like I don't think that we were looking at this game like, oh my god, like Atlanta, if Guzan stands on his head, like that's totally possible. Like I don't think that was the view coming into this game. So I think a lot of those things aligned where Miami still won. They weren't at their best, particularly Messi wasn't. Their star play, like Jordi Alba, that was an incredible goal. Like he's been so like I don't think we've talked about him enough this season. Like he's been phenomenal, particularly over like the last like 2/3 of the season. Anyway, that like all of these things kind of aligned where yeah we didn't dominate. I think if we played that whole scenario out 10 times, I think it's much more likely that they win by multiple goals than it is to kind of scrape by on the 2-1.
Yeah, it was obviously the injuries were a huge part of this. So Brooks Lennon went down with a dislocated shoulder, and then Stian Gregerson forced out with a hamstring injury pretty early on in this game. And so that shifts the defense. Although the opening goal for Miami was in the first 90 seconds, beautifully done down the left wing. And then the substitutions happen, and Miami struggled to score that second goal and struggled to be dangerous. In Messi's performance in this one, I sort of agree with you. Now, he hit 2 or 3 long shots that Guzan had to be great on. He was not what we've seen in his chance creation for other players. And that's where this game felt very odd to me in that we saw Montreal and we saw Orlando, when they pinned Atlanta in, move Atlanta's pieces really well and force Atlanta to scramble and create openings. And it didn't feel like Miami did that in a way in which Miami normally does to most teams in Major League Soccer. And that's what was very odd about this game. And I couldn't tell if that was the playoffs and, Atlanta come in off this high of you travel, you win on decision day, you win on the wild card game, you come into the building, like you're playing at a higher level of energy maybe, and you're at that playoff level before the other team. Or if it was just Miami struggling with what they were seeing and the way they were playing. We talked about it last week. As expected, Dax McCarty gets the start, so they were able to Atlanta was able to clog up central midfield a little bit more than they have in other games, and really didn't have much attacking support. And we're going to try and defend and keep everything in front of us. And I thought they did a pretty good job with that over the course of this game, including when Noah Cobb came on. He played really well, and then he ends up having a hand in the goal as well for this team. So I thought it was overall that good performance from them. You saw the talent difference of there was not a ton for Atlanta to lean on, and they weren't able to bring pieces off the bench to really change the game. But Saba scores another big goal for them, and there was a lot of good moments in this game.
I totally agree. And man, Saba can be such an enigmatic figure in that he's capable of this, but he's just been super inconsistent. Like when he's on, this is when you're looking forward to next year. And again, I don't want to do the post-mortem on Atlanta United while they're still playing, right? That's super disrespectful. But getting into the playoffs, winning that wild card game, I think that was okay. Whatever happens from here, zero expectations. And everything you're building towards 2025. Mm-hmm. If that version of Saba is who they get for the majority of the season, if he can be consistent, and I don't know if he can, but if he can be, that is going to be such a difference for this team because you already have Mrnachuk, right? He can help take off that creative burden. He could be somebody who understands the spacing around Mrnachuk, hopefully a DP forward, and then I don't know where they're going to use the third DP slot, right? But if he's your fourth most important attacker, that's phenomenal. It's just I don't know if I think we've seen enough of him now that he is what he is, right? Again, he's really good in transition, but he's inconsistent. And if he wasn't inconsistent, he wouldn't be a tamable contract. He probably wouldn't be here, right? So you gotta I understand these things, but this was a very good version of Saba. And again, there was a moment when it was I was like, oh my god, could Atlanta get this to a shootout? Could Atlanta win game 1 in Miami? This would be incredible.
Chier had one big chance he was put in through in the first half. He kind of tried anonymous. He tried to draw contact and act like he got fouled when he was put in on goal. Just focus on the chance to finish 1v1, and you at that point would have tied the game up and then Saba's goal would have put them ahead. As you said, Saba's not a guy you play through, right? He's not a guy who can kill the momentum of this game. Moranchuk wasn't either, once again. And I think that is something that obviously it's year one, but they're going to have to settle into. If you remember last year, though, for Atlanta, they went on the road. They got smoked in Columbus. They came home, and Thiago Almada, I think he was suspended for the first game, comes out.
And a stupid card on decision day. Just
right.
Idiot.
And then he was the best player on the field in game two, and they won that game. And they went back, and they had no chance in game three, and they never really played, and they didn't win. This is their chance in game two now, right? Like, this is the chance to host the game in front of a huge crowd, prove that your club's a little bit different than it's been over the last few years. Let Saba and Moranchuk have this big stage, and it's going to be tough because Brooks Lennon, dislocated shoulder, there's no chance he plays. Gregerson, we're not sure. We'll see what happens with him. It's going to be an uphill battle, but like if those players play up to their level, there's a pretty good chance that they can get a win here and sort of shift momentum. So I thought, coming out of game one, they should feel better about this than I expected. Post-game, I think the reporters who were talking to the team, Rob Valentino and Guzan especially, they asked about the travel schedule and the schedule for Atlanta around the injuries because Atlanta played Orlando on decision day on last Saturday. Then they traveled up and played Montreal on Tuesday night to travel to Miami and play against Miami on Friday night. And the questions were sort of like, do you think the injuries had something to do with the schedule? I thought Rob Valentino and Guzan's answers were correct, which is like, we go where they tell us to play. We don't want to make up excuses. This is the 9th best team in Major League Soccer. If you don't want to travel, like, you should win more games. That's the reality of it. It's a gift that there's an opportunity to get into playoffs at that point. And I think the team kind of understands that as much as you never want to see an injury and you don't want to put players in danger and all of that. I think it's fair to sort of talk about what's the amount of games over the course of a week and travel and all of that. But if Atlanta had been better, they would have hosted the wild card. Or if they'd been better, they wouldn't have played in the wild card. And like that's sort of the advantages you're building in to the structure, which is why a Miami can sort of lumber over the line in game one because they were the best team in the regular season and technically the best team of all time. Quick shout out at the end here to Ian Frey. He has been through the most absurd injury luck ever. 2 ACLs already. He went down with a knee injury. It's just hard.
3 ACLs.
3 ACLs already.
Yeah.
Wow. And he went down with another injury in this one, and you could see on his face, he knows exactly what's going on. So that is brutal to see.
So in that moment, like when he immediately put his face in his shirt, like I was feeling emotional. I was like, this poor kid, man. Like this is brutal. And so you fear the worst. You fear that it's an ACL. And there's a silver lining here in that it was a meniscus injury. And like the macro of this is good news. He only tore his meniscus. His ACL is fine. Like just shows you all of the things, everything he's persevered through. What I was told is that he's going to be expected back early in 2025, which again, this sucks. I cannot imagine going through all of these rehabs, the work you have to, and how like lonely that can be when everybody else is training. You're in the gym, you know, you have trainers, he has support, right? But like, you're not with your teammates. You're not on the field with the guy. Like you have to.
The worst part of being a pro. You do all the bad stuff without any of the good stuff.
Yeah, and so he's going to do that again, and I don't want to overlook that at all. But like, at least he is expected back early in 2025. And again, it makes me sad that we're like, wow, that's awesome. He only tore his meniscus, but just this poor kid, man.
Yeah, absolutely brutal. Special player and obviously a huge part of this team in terms of the emotional side of things because you see how the other players have reacted every time this happens, and you never want to see it for a young player. So that sucks. For him, Inter Miami will go up to Atlanta now and play. We talked a little bit about this coming into the playoff series, but you know, for the teams, you have a week or so in between all the games. So you'd assume for the higher seed teams, you're going to want to try and close things out in game 2. But going to Atlanta on turf with Messi and Suarez and Busquets and Alba and these older players and the injury troubles they've had, it will be something to watch out for in terms of what lineup they choose to start and how they choose to go about this game. We'll talk about more about that, though, on Thursday. Let's get to the second game.
Sorry, I just one more point on the Miami-Atlanta.
No.
Julian Gressel, not like I'm good with the shift to the 3 at the back, so Busquets is like a deep line playmaker. Why is Weingart starting over Julian Gressel at right wing back? I do not understand. This is a very obvious difference in talent, quality, reliability, consistency. I don't understand it. I just don't.
He hit a pretty clean volley, though, on the one chance.
Congrats.
He had, and almost forced the goal. By the way, on the Alba goal, it was like, I think a lot of people thought it was Messi because you've got 18 and 10, and he hit it, and like the people around me, there was like definitely a vibe of like, oh, Messi's the best. And you're like, he is. I don't think he scored, but he is the best. And Alba's pretty good as well. LA Galaxy, Colorado. Whew. Colorado Rapids, RIP at this point. 5-0 loss in the playoffs. You come out of the Atlanta game and you look at it and you say like, all right, teams are going to be competitive. This is going to be close. The Rapids were behind the 8 ball from the opening whistle. Lineup reasons, Georgi Mihailovic, we already thought would be out. Cole Bassett, we thought would be back for this game. He wasn't. Zach Steffen was available, but that was the only player they were really able to get back from injury. Kevin Cabral as well. I don't think he would be on the top of the list of the attacking players you choose to come back from injury based off that list. But the Galaxy came out flying. They came out completely ready for this moment. Ricky was pushing the tempo. He was pushing the pace. First 15, 20 minutes, everything was going forward. He was attacking. Then as the game shifted, he dropped a little bit deeper to find the ball and get the game. But Cerrillo and Delgado react really well to that. And so when he comes in and says, oh, I'm going to play left center back in the build out for a little bit, Cerrillo knows that he has to push higher and Delgado knows he has to rotate over. And you saw a lot of it come to fruition in a really positive way. And then you see the quality in the final third for this team. It's an LA Galaxy team that has to score goals to win. That we know that's the formula. So to come out and put up a 5 spot for them, like as much as they'll say, oh, we love the shutout and all of that, that stuff's not super sustainable for them. But the 5 goals is, and they need to be able to do that. And it was the perfect start for their playoff race.
Yeah, they were phenomenal. On the Colorado side of it, it's obviously a really bad performance, an awful way to start the playoffs after such a great season. Things that can't happen when, say, you're the Rapids playing against the Galaxy, particularly without Georgi Mihailovic. You cannot concede on set pieces. You have to win the set piece margin. And just some of the, like, I don't even know if they would call them, like, full-blown transition moments. It felt like when the Galaxy pushed the tempo when they got to the final third, like, Colorado really struggled with that. And that, like, it was a little baffling to me because they've had their issues defensively. Yeah. But, like, that's not really one of them, right? Like, yeah. So, I don't know. It was... Like you said with sustainability, I'm not entirely sure, but like it's the obvious thing to say. They lose 5-0. I'm really concerned about the Colorado Rapids. Like there was just so many things that went wrong, and like you said, we were expecting Cole Bassett back. Georgi Mihailovic, I don't know if he's going to be ready for Game 2, and if he is, what state will he be in? How much of Georgi Mihailovic will he be? That like going into the game, it was, hey, can they keep it? Even if they lose, keep close. Like, hey, maybe try to whatever. Like they shouldn't have been on the same field as the LA Galaxy. Yeah. That is extremely concerning. And that goes into, like, I'm sure Chris Armas and the coaching staff are like, who cares? This isn't aggregate. If we lost 1-0, if we lost 7-0, it's all the same. Who cares, right? Like, move forward. Like, that's tough to just drop off and move forward. For sure.
Yeah, it's tough to turn around off a performance like that. And it's tough to just, like, wake up the next day and say, we're a different team. This doesn't matter. Now, I will say the altitude will help. The weather will help. Going home will help. There's more happening for the Rapids than just it's a new game to say, okay, it's a different enough environment and it will shift things a little bit for them. But for Colorado, the biggest issue in this game, I think, was, well, one thing was individual defending moments. Reggie Cannon had a tough game. And you've got a guy in Keegan Rosenberry who's a captain of this team. Like, he has been a solid piece. I thought the Reggie Cannon signing made sense in that he's a player of a high quality that was available. In terms of tactically, it doesn't really fit. He's played left back a couple times. Now you've got Keegan Rosenberry playing left back. You've already signed Sam Vines. I know Vines has struggled this year, but you can't say to yourself, well, he's not a starter on our team at this point. And so to then go out and have a game like this where he looked disconnected from the back line, he struggled with his 1v1 battles and all of that, that's really, really tough. But for Colorado, it's just you can't sustain any level of attack the other way. The few times you had Rafa Navarro pick up the ball and start attacking centrally, he didn't have runners. Like, there's no one around him to be dangerous. And that's how you slow the Galaxy attack, is to try and get Peck and Painstill to say, maybe I have to sit a little deeper to help defend. Maybe I have to come a little deeper to pick up the ball. None of that happened after like the first 15 or 20 minutes of this game. And so then the Galaxy start to pour it on. And I think the biggest part of this performance for them that you come out with is the killer P's, you're going to get the goals. Ricky, as much as he has been good or they've won or lost playoff games in his time, he pretty much shows up. Yeah. If Joveljic is hot, this is a different team. Like, if Joveljic is playing as a top 5 striker in Major League Soccer, if he's finishing his chances, there's nowhere to hide. against this team. And so to see him score that first goal, to see him play with the confidence he did, the celebrations, I think post game he dropped a "job's not done yet" line like that after. That I think is like dream scenario stuff for the Galaxy.
I agree. Like, this attack is very complimentary. The issue with the Galaxy in years past was it didn't seem like a discernible plan. It was, Douglas Luiz, let's get him. Like, right? Like this, like what Will Kuntz and this front office has done. And again, this is what we were saying in the offseason of like, I was higher on Joseph Paintsil just because of his age, what he did in Belgium. And I thought that would be quicker to translate to MLS than Gabriel. Gabriel Peck has been better than like the two of them have been very incredible. But like everything makes so much sense. And they already had obviously Dejan Joveljic on the team. He makes so much sense with this attacking quartet. Like I love to see that. And like these things should be obvious. Sign players who are complementary to each other. Like you have Ricky Puig. Instead of getting a 33-year-old, not exactly fit Brazilian winger, get two dudes who run in behind. And these things are obvious. These things are simple, but it doesn't always happen. Doesn't always seem to happen. Particularly for the Galaxy in the TAM era, it absolutely was not happening. It was, this guy might be good. This guy might be good. How does he fit with the team? Who cares? We'll figure it out. And then they never did figure it out. So credit where credit is due on, again, what should be a basic thing, but they've absolutely nailed it.
Garces has stepped in as the starting right center back. That's a move they made mid-season. Yeah. It's surprising, but it feels at this point you're not going to change it. And the one figure-out move they've made is Marco Reus as a TAM signing, which is like, that's the risk you take. They started him as a second center mid alongside Ricky for a bunch of games. Didn't start this game. Came off the bench. I do think that's interesting because you are seeing a level of balance with Cerrillo and Delgado as the two center mids behind Ricky. I don't know if this was we think we can take Colorado at home in game one. We don't need to, or if this is the starting 11 when available right now. And unless something changes, you're not bringing Marco Reus in. I think I assumed Reus would start this game because of what they've done and what they've done. They did it against in El Tráfico. Like that's what they did in big games this season. They chose not to do it in this one. I think that's credit to Greg Vanney for sticking to his guns and finding what works and not being obsessed with talent and name and pushing it all in there. But it will be interesting what it looks like if they do get through a round like this and you say, going into the next round, we've got a home game against RSL or we're going on the road against LAFC. Is that not our best 11? Even if it doesn't totally make sense in terms of tactics or whatever, that's talent on the field and trying to get it all together. That's going to be really fascinating to watch with this Galaxy team. I will say this, I wouldn't be shocked if Colorado bounced back at home. They have this year, as much as it's been a struggle down the stretch, like there seems to be a vibe in that building, right? They won all those Leagues Cup games in that building at a minimum. So I think I wouldn't count them out yet, but it's going to be an uphill battle going into this second game. Let's jump over to Sunday evening. We started with Orlando against Charlotte. For this Orlando team, they came in sort of in weird medium ground. They had won a ton of games in a row. The loss at home on decision day. They go up against a Charlotte team. As you said, we thought this was a super even matchup. And we talked about Oscar Pereira sort of making games messy and all of that and a little bit dirty. And they came out and they played really well in this game. They get the 2-0 win over Charlotte. I think they set the table pretty well for themselves in terms of a playoff run. And you'd have to say, outside of like the insane NYCFC victory back when Rodrigo Schlegel went and goal and like the environment and all of that, and that was their first playoff win, this is probably the best postseason game they've played under Oscar Pereira in his time in Orlando.
I think you're right. Again, that Schlegel moment was the bigger moment because of how incredible and unique it was, but this was their best performance. So a couple takeaways that I had that I was super interested by. So we were previewing this game and saying, will either team be able to break down a low block? Because, again, Charlotte is one of the best defensive teams in the league. Both of the teams kind of prefer to play like that. They did. Orlando did. And it wasn't even like, so Facundo Torres I thought was good. Ojeda I thought was good. Angulo. It was Angulo breaking down the kind of a lock defense, which I didn't know he had that in him. All this is extremely encouraging for the Orlando performance. I will say, like, Charlotte weren't bad. Like, I thought Charlotte were pretty good. There are moments, and like it'll happen in every game. You can go back to a highlight and be like, oh, what about that Abada chance where he tried to chip the keeper? Or what about this, or the Ajimang header when he came off the bench? And know that you're going to get to, I could tee you up on like, he should be starting. The
best moment of the game is his first touch off the bench in the 71st minute. What are you, and you got shut out? What are we doing?
There's been enough data on Karol Swiderski as the center. Ajimang is better. Ajimang is better for this team in this moment right now. Like,
yeah, or just play both, and they might now. So Pep Biel got an idiotic red card at the end of this game.
What did you think about that?
What did I think about the red? Like giving it as a red?
Whichever way you want to take it.
The intent is there. The contact is not. It's a dumb play. It's one of those moments. If I was on his team, I would blame him. Yeah. He put himself in that situation, and he wasted. Totally he gave the referee the opportunity and the opening to do it. And what we just said about Colorado, it's not an aggregate series. You're losing 2-0. Like, one, a goal gets you back in it, or just close down and move on to the next game. Now our DP10 is suspended for the next game because you had to do that. So that's my thoughts on that. And now I would say without it, you should start Ajimang with Swiderski. It shouldn't be an and/or. Have two center forwards in the team. First of all, make Rodrigo Schlegel mark someone 100% of the game. Like, I don't understand how that's not like the first game plan for a lot of teams. And then you can say to Dagger Dan, okay, if you want to attack, great. But there's going to be a presence up top. So if you're going to go and push forward, and if Santos wants to get into the attack, which they were really good for large segments of the game, if you want to do that, like, we're going to have a threat up top. Also, you'd assume the field tilt shifts because you're a home team, and that changes things slightly. But I thought what you said, Angulo was really good in this game. I thought Ojeda was phenomenal, and I thought the game plan in this for Orlando, which was clearly to make Angulo and Ojeda sit in that left channel and either make Burns stay, or if he goes, make Malanda decide what he's going to do. And you're putting a young center back in a really tough situation. And I didn't think Westwood and Bronico gave enough help to support. And you look at the goal that Ojeda scores, and it's like the one time that Ojeda didn't go out wide and Angulo did. But all the other times, Malanda had to track Ojeda out to the sideline. And it was in build-outs, and it was in moments where they went long against the run of play. Like, all these things, I thought Orlando had it perfectly in what they thought they could do. But the one thing I will say in all this, and I took screenshots because I have the worst memory on the planet, is that I took a screenshot during this game. The real feel in Orlando was 72 degrees with humidity, and at the exact same time, it was 78% humidity. And in Charlotte, it was 54 real feel at the time of the game. Like, you could see Charlotte's pressure come slow. They closed slow. They did not close down and pressure the back line the way they'd wanted to. And Orlando, a lot of their good moments came playing through Charlotte's pressure. You'd assume that pressure gets better going home with the weather and all of that, which is to Charlotte's advantage in potentially staying in this series. But this was not the start you want to see for a team that I think had a lot of hope and promise coming into this game.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I would say that I thought that they were fine, right? Like, I think the better team won, but, like, it wasn't a super disheartening performance. But, like, again, the red card of Pep Biel, like, that is a really sour note to end the game on. It's just so avoidable. I was talking to Devin Kerr, Apple TV broadcaster. He was calling the game with Nate Bukaty last night, and he was like, yeah, like, it was a stupid play. He's like, my view was that was absolutely should have been a red card, and that the referee made the correct decision, and, like, the intent was, like, your word you used as well. And I was asking him his thoughts on the game just in general. And, like, one of the things he said that I thought was salient and interesting, the way that Charlotte tried to pressure was, we want you, Schlegel, we want you on the ball. Like, that is going to be our pressing trigger. That is where we're going to try to funnel the ball, trying to eliminate the early passes to the fullbacks. And they weren't super successful in that. Maybe, like you said, the 5% of difference that comes from being sharper in the press, that could be the difference in this. That's the difference between the press not working and it is working, right? Like, so I'm curious to see what that's going to look like in Charlotte. I don't know if I agree with you in playing two center forwards, because that pretty quickly they could lose the central midfield battle if they're outnumbered. And, like,
okay, so can I just? I agree with you, except Araujo and Cartagena, when they win the central midfield battle, don't create chances. So you are in danger of losing possession, but I don't think you're in danger of losing the game there, because Orlando's central midfield are guys who want to work the ball side to side and guys who want to keep the game safe. And unless you think there's someone besides Pep Biel for Charlotte who comes into this game and is a dangerous chance creator centrally, you're probably not really going to create most of your chances there anyway. So you're either hitting in transition, or you've got two big options that now you can start to get crosses in. So if it's Vargas who comes in with Abada and those are your two wide guys, like, That's one option, or it's just Abada on one side and Byrne getting forward on the other side because you've got Tim Ream who sort of shifts into that back three.
Yep.
That's the other option as well. So I agree that could be the issue, but I don't think that's where you lose this game against Orlando.
I think that's fair, but I still think it just should be Ajimang up top. And then, again, if you need to bring in Swiderski as like a second forward or depending on the game states, then you make your decisions from there. But I'd still lean that way. And so, like, Bronico's been really, really good down the stretch. And I know that he wasn't, great last night, but I think that's where I would lean if I was Dean Smith.
Duncan McGuire hit the crossbar on a breakaway in stoppage time to sort of seal the deal. I obviously have him on my Golden Boot playoff team, and he screwed me, so thank you for that, Duncan McGuire. Shout out to a legend, though. He's a good dude. And so I would like to see more goals for the guys that I picked, and I would like to see less goals for all the other players. Shout out to Facu Torres, by the way, for getting the goal. He's had some up and down moments. It was a really well-taken goal. Again, you start to see with Ojeda there and Ramiro Enrique central, Facu's trying to do less, and he is therefore more productive. And this seems to be the cleanest fit that Orlando has had. I would say no matter what happens in this series, I feel more hopeful about Orlando going forward right now than I did a year ago when they were second in the Eastern Conference. And I think that Orlando fans should be excited. There are individual upgrades you could make. They are the easier ones of you should have probably a higher level starting center back and maybe a fullback and all that stuff. That stuff's easier to fix than we don't know how all our attacking pieces that we spent millions of dollars on fit together. So I think you should feel pretty good about that. If you're an Orlando fan, you should feel good about this series. I will say this though, we've got Charlotte FC Fan TV in here. I am hyped for Friday night. I do think the stadium is going to be bouncing. It's a night game, Friday night. This, I think, is going to be the perfect start to the weekend of this second weekend of playoff games. And whatever Charlotte does on the field, this is a moment they need. They needed a home game. They needed a home playoff game to sell and push. And so I think this is going to be really, really cool to watch. We mentioned Pa Moduka off the top. Obviously, he's an assistant at Charlotte, so he'll be moving on after the season to Phoenix Rising. He is a name that we put on the list of potential coaches over and over and over again. He won a CPL championship with Pacific. He then went and coached North Texas and helped them make the postseason all the years he was there. 1 or 2, I can't remember now. One. There you go, because you just are writing a piece about this, so you should know. Yeah, that makes sense. And now he's going to a Phoenix team that is 8th entering the playoffs. They went to the championship last year, also as a low playoff team, and they are someone who has a stacked roster of USL talent. And it's a really cool region with no MLS team, a ton of young talent. Pa is someone who's passionate about playing young players and pushing them through. This feels like a really clean fit. And I would say if it goes even half as well as I expect it to, he will continue to remain on the list of MLS coaching openings. He is someone that you'd think would be interviewed and consistently considered going forward.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with this. So, again, Phoenix Rising, they're going to name Pa Moduka the next head coach. They are entering their playoffs right now. They have an interim head coach that is going to preside over the team for the playoffs, of course, continue. Same way with Pa Moduka is going to be with Charlotte for the rest of their season. So this is going to be, I wouldn't expect an announcement until both Charlotte and Phoenix are eliminated from the playoffs or winning trophies, whichever one happens. So I don't think anything's going to come soon. I really, really like this hire by Phoenix. I think that this is ambitious. I think Pa is a guy, so he's in his mid-40s, so it's not like he's obviously young, but this is a rising coach. But he's still somebody who has head coaching experience with Pacific and North Texas. I think that's really important too.
Right.
Everything that he's worked under some really good managers as an assistant. He's got a ton of experience there. But this won't be the first time he's walking into a locker room as the head coach. It's whatever growing pains that could be there, or just the things that you figure out. I didn't consider this when I was an assistant coach. Right. He's already done all of that.
Yeah.
So I think he could hit the ground running here. I do think that he's going to continue to have legitimate MLS interest. My only worry is just the track record of USL coaches not kind of getting elevated to MLS. They come in to take an assistant job, but Pa's already been an assistant in MLS. Yeah. So I think that it'll be different for him. Again, he's very well respected around the league. I am super happy for him. I've only heard great things about him, particularly in Charlotte. He was with Cincy for a little bit. He ended his playing career in Portland and then Vancouver, and he was a player coach for Vancouver's second team. So he's been here a long time. He's a dude that, again, all I hear is good things. So I'm super happy for Pa, I'm super, like, again, I'm impressed by Phoenix Rising being able to convince Pa. Pa interviewed for CF Montreal. Pa has interviewed for a handful of other jobs over the last few years. Like, he is a guy that is in the mix for a lot of these coaching jobs. On another side, I will say is that, like, it's harder and harder, no matter how many teams MLS has. It's harder and harder to get a coaching job here because of how many people want to be here and how many options are. Like, if I'm Pa, I'm looking at a guy like Gio Savarese. He hasn't got an offer yet. And like, so if you're him, you're like, I could hold out, or I could, maybe I'll get it. But it's like, this is a really good opportunity. I love this project. Phoenix, right? Like, this makes a lot of sense for him. It makes a lot of sense for Phoenix. So I think that went into it too. That like maybe that there will be another job interview in MLS that line. But it's like, well, what if I passed up on this opportunity and then, who's the next USL club? Like, I really like this opportunity. I really like this project, so I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, it is. We had Ben Pierman on this show a few weeks ago. Charleston went to a final. They've played young players. They've sold players, all of that. I have said Danny Cruz's name with every job opening that has occurred in Major League Soccer for 3-4 years now.
Yeah.
Louisville are in a different stratosphere when you come to USL. And he did it. He changed the team. It's not that he took over John Hackworth's team and rolled it out there and they played. The team has changed the way they play and the personnel over and over time. And he still hasn't gotten an MLS coaching job. It takes a little bit of bravery to hire someone who you don't have a track record with and isn't already proven. Bobby walked us through it when we did that segment, when Mikey Varis got the job. Like, it is tough to get someone to make the jump, whether you're an assistant trying to come in or whether you're a head coach, unless you already have a relationship with someone. Where Chris Albright knew Pat Noonan because he worked with him in the Philadelphia Union, and he was his assistant when he was an assistant GM, and like, it fit together and it made sense. And you look at other people like that where you're like, who's this person's guy? Who did they play with when they were younger? Who have they worked with? That's a lot of the connections, which is unfortunate. But I think if Pa goes to Phoenix and is successful, you have a body of work where, at a minimum, a GM who wants to hire him, or CSO, whatever you want to say, can put his resume on the table and say, this guy deserves this opportunity, no doubt, and no one can question it. And I think this is a good opportunity to do it there in Phoenix. Let's finish out with our final game of the weekend, the most competitive one. LAFC against Vancouver. I feel like I came in hot on Vancouver 2 weeks ago. I was so frustrated the way they played, the inability to host a home playoff game that they had earned. All of that, they went out, they smoked Portland, they lit Portland's house on fire, and they said, hey, everyone, go look at that. And then they went into LA, and they were the better team out the gate by far in this game. Brian White hits the post. That's a brutal moment. Ryan Gauld, equal to, I think, Ricky Puig, running the game here. He is, when he's high, he's stretching the field and defenders are backtracking, and that creates the game. And then he drops in and he helped put pressure on. And I thought Vancouver had some really nice moments. They had a ton of ideas of how they could go about the game. They couldn't find the finish. And then LAFC, if you give them the half chance, they're going to create it. Do you want to talk about the penalty specifically?
I mean, I understand the frustration, but I think that was the correct call.
Yeah.
What about you?
I thought it was, I said it in live time. I was like, that's a penalty. It sucks you don't have a reverse camera angle, right? If there's an angle, if there was a camera on the other side of the box, it's going to be obvious, I think, that it hits his hand. You can't really see it. And it's away from the body. You can't really see it in behind. And I don't like the conversation of like, oh, it's tough on Tristan Blackman. It's like, this is not a fairness debate. Like, this is it was or wasn't. Yeah. The thing that stood out for me here that killed me was in watching this moment, and I recognized it as it occurred, said it out loud, and then it ends up on the penalty, is that Vancouver had handled everything perfectly. So Laborda, who gets to start at right back once again, and I think Vanny's done well with this Christmas tree of like, we have this central midfield player, whether it's Fafa or Ali Ahmed, who plays centrally, but then goes out wide and plays as a wing back when we want to defend in that shape or attack from that shape. Laborda's the right back / right center back. He decides to push forward into the right channel, into the attack. Kubas shields over. He's right near Bouanga, knowing that the danger there is the counterattack. Adekube comes inside to pick up the second man, which at the time is Bogusz, and you've still got plus numbers with the center backs behind them. They win the ball back, and Adekube sort of turns and plays it back to his center backs and doesn't look and turns that ball over into Bogusz's feet. And then LAFC's off and racing. And it's one of those moments that kills me because we talked about for Vancouver, you've lost to this team 3 times now in knockout competitions. What's going to be different? And it's like they allowed LAFC out into transition throughout those other games. So here's their fix. And set pieces. Here's their fix. The rest defense was in the correct place. They read the play. Like, they weren't going to let LAFC beat them in the same way. And then you get the mental mistake from one of your big players, one of your big signings in Adekugbe, and it allows the opportunity, and then the penalty kick happens. If the penalty kick doesn't happen, it's probably a goal. Like, you were 2 against 3 defensively against Bogusz, Kike Oliveira, and Bouanga. That's the death sentence in Major League Soccer when that happens. And then after the goal, I thought LAFC finally woke up from 45 to 60 minutes of this game where they got the second goal. They were dangerous. They were dominant. They were on the front foot. And then they took their foot off the gas after that and allowed Vancouver back into the game. I have struggled with Inter Miami at times this year, right? The underlying numbers say they're not as dominant as they say. I come on this show once a week and say, I don't know, Philly should have gotten a result. Charlotte should have gotten a result. Atlanta should have gotten a result. I don't really know who LAFC are right now. And after this many years under Trunzo, I get it's effective, but it's like not enjoyable or dominating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the identity is we're going to kill you in transition with our special players, particularly around Denny Bouanga. We're going to be dominant on set pieces, which is what they've been generally. Unless that there's a stat that could prove me wrong there. But like, we're going to be super dynamic in central midfield. We're going to have a guy like Ilie Sanchez who can dictate the play. But then we're going to have super athletic midfielders as the dual eights. Lewis O'Brien, Tim Tillman. Atuesta has been playing that rather than 6. Like, kind of going down the line with all these options, all these players over the last couple of years. In that Jose Cifuentes, of course, that's their identity for me. It's a team that we're going to kill you in transition because these are the strengths of the players, particularly Bouanga, and then they're bringing in a Lewis O'Brien. They're bringing in a Tim Tillman when it's kind of clear that Jose Cifuentes is going to leave. Like, that's kind of the profile they're looking for because that's how they want to open up the game. And yes, it's much different than what it was under Bob Bradley when Carlos Vela had the single best season in league history in 2019. Like, that's a different team. But for me, like, it's just so enjoyable watching Denny Bouanga kill people in transition. Like, I understand that, like, it could be more aesthetic, but, like, I don't blame them at all. Like you said, it's effective. That's all that matters. In this game, from Vancouver, we're good. Like, you could, like, I keep saying this when you go back to games of, like, oh, this moment here, this moment there. Stuart Armstrong plays a beautifully, perfectly timed through ball to Brian White. Brian White beats Hugo Lloris inside of the post. No goal.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's at 0-0. Yeah. That changes the complexity.
That was like 10 minutes into the game. You go up 1-0 there. And again, you talk about the Atlanta experience of, like, you're coming off the high of the playoff wildcard win. You come in with momentum. LAFC are off kilter a little. You maybe get to halftime up 2-0, right? Because you're going to be the one on the front foot. It was absolutely a game-changing moment. And again, to the Vancouver game plan side, Stuart Armstrong in that central midfield, that moment comes off 2 times that Vancouver wins on the counter press centrally, where Kubas reads the play and steps forward, and then Armstrong wins it back, and Gauld wins it back. And you're like, oh, this is how they can win without Ilie in the game because Lewis O'Brien and Tillman can get pressured in central midfield if you're able to get close to them. And it all worked. And then, as you say, the moments, it's a half inch. That ball goes in, it's completely different. I would argue on the Gauld free kick as well. The Gauld free kick that hits the upper 90, I think it was first half stoppage time. So at 1-0, him and Armstrong are standing over it, and he curls it left-footed to the far right post from the left side. It was like the weirdest angle, and it curled against the way you would assume. And Lloris didn't have that corner covered. Like, if that thing sneaks in, and it was close, you're at a 1-1 game as well. I will say, though, you mentioned, like, Bouanga and the beauty of it. The goal they scored where Oliveira finished from right to left was absolutely gorgeous. And the soccer recognition, the IQ from Hollingshead to understand if Bouanga is going to go out to the touchline, I can go fill the left channel. And so he pushes higher up the field than Bouanga. That creates a little bit of chaos in Vancouver's backline. Laborda doesn't know if he should go wide or not. And then Bouanga doesn't hesitate. It's a one-touch pass into Giroud's feet. The layoff to Hollingshead, it gets to Bogusz. And then, as Oliveira's celebration showed, Bogusz being selfless enough to play it off to Oliveira instead of take the shot himself from a central area leads to a goal. I could be convinced that you are a little let down by Takayoka that you concede a goal from that angle, but it's a really good move and it's a really good shot. And it was a deserved goal. And that 15 minutes was, okay, LAFC are the best team in the league, and this is what you're going to see, and this is a team going to MLS Cup. It just is odd to me that at home against Vancouver, it's only a 15-minute spell of play like that. And that's the part that I think I sort of get left a little wanting of, like, you don't dictate the game, really. You don't control the game in a moment against a team that has come in struggling. And Vancouver should have pure confidence for this second leg. Like, they should go into it believing that they can get the result, that they can push this back to LA, and that they are close enough to be competitive if they get back to LA. And that's like all you can ask for if you're one of these lower seeds at this point of the postseason.
Yeah, this is a really huge game for Vancouver. Like, again, I thought they performed very well in leg one. Game one. I don't know what the correct terminology is. Well, when is game 15? But like, if they lose in 2 games,
Tom, the MLS playoffs are basically a Grateful Dead song. There's no start, there's no finish. They just play.
Just jams and flows within each other.
It's just a jam.
Jam session. Yeah, like, but if they lose at home, and like, then like, what are they different than last? And like,
yeah.
I would say like the quality, the last week particularly in like Armstrong, Gauld, White, and everything in Vite, whatever, all of these pieces, like, oh, I see it. This is what you want. And like, I think that would have been fine last year. I mean, 2 years ago, definitely. This year, you can't take a moral victory here. Like, it has to. And again, like, even a moral victory would be, we won one of the games against LAFC and got eliminated in round 1 anyway. Like, this is just tough, right? Like, and I think all of our criticisms of this team shouldn't have been in the wild card game. This team should have been fighting for 4th. Should have been fighting for a home series in playoffs. They should have absolutely been avoiding LAFC or the LA Galaxy in round 1 at the very least, right? Like, so.
Yeah.
I understand that this is difficult. It's a bad draw. It's difficult, but like, you got to make it happen. At some point, you just have to make it happen, right? Like, so, and again, game 1 was super encouraging. And if they can build on that game 2, like you said, if they play this well, win game 2, go back to LA game 3, like, I firmly believe that they could do this. And we're at the intersection of believe it can happen versus it has to happen at some point. It just has to.
And the part that they have fallen short on, not just the result purely, is the steady performances in the past. Of when you reach a high level, can you do it again and again? And that's where they have completely failed under Sartini, which is, I think, part of why Canadian Championship has worked for them, because it's one-off high moments and it's not, 3 weeks in a row. That would be the development to me, is can they put this performance on the field again with the same ideas and execution this weekend? And then can they do it again the following weekend? And if you see that, I think that's a step forward for Vancouver, but that's the necessity. And that's where American sports are stupid, because you play for a full year to like have one postseason game where everything's going to be dictated based off that moment. But that's what we do. So you got to wake up and do it in the moment anyway. Let's jump into the games we've got coming up this week. Obviously tonight, so pretty soon, we'll probably spend less time on these. We've got FC Cincinnati against NYCFC and Seattle against Houston. Not less time because these games aren't any worse. I think this is probably the best day doubleheader that we're going to have this entire round, but there's not a lot of time for this episode to live around that one. So we'll be back on Thursday to review it all for you. And then Tuesday night, Columbus hosting Red Bulls and RSL hosting Minnesota. Let's start with Cincinnati NYCFC. We had this super high on our excitement list because of what we've seen from these two teams. The 4-2 come from behind win for FC Cincinnati, in Leagues Cup this year, and then NYCFC getting a 3-2 win in the regular season game after that in September. Coming into this game for Cincinnati, this is like as close to healthy as we've seen them for a pretty long time. So they don't have every option, but it feels like they're going to have true center backs in this game. It feels like they're going to have wing backs who play as wing backs, and then they're going to have decisions to make in the attack of what they want to do. And for NYCFC, they come in a pretty good moment. Alonso Martinez has been the best goal scorer in Major League Soccer since the Leagues Cup, and he will maintain that spot at the center forward position. And then up the spine, it's pretty solid for them. Santi Rodriguez, Keaton Parks has played really well. James Sands has played really well. I was going to say Justin Hack, and then I got caught in the middle because I knew you'd come through the screen and attack me, and then I had to get to Keaton Parks quickly on that one as my transition instead. What's your idea? What's your thought coming into this one Monday night?
So I think that both of these, this is going to be a fascinating series. I think that these are both good teams, even with Cincy being hamstrung with the injuries that they've had and the center forward revolving door that they've had, right? I still think that they're a very good team. I think Cincy are the bigger threat to Columbus or Miami than NYCFC, because I think that the best version of what Cincy can be right now is we're gonna choke the game. It's gonna be so difficult for you to attack because Miles Robinson, Chidozie Awaziem, Obi Nwobodo, all that. Like, that's fine. And then guess what? We have Lucho Costa and you don't. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so
Yeah.
there is a path if they play to, whatever their best capabilities are of this current group that is right now. There is a genuine path to MLS Cup. I really do believe that because of how good they can be defensively. And beyond Lucho Costa, who can be the best player on the field any single time he plays, Luke Orieno can have the best moment of any game that he plays, right? Like, so you have the defensive structure, the experience, the quality, and then you have the attacking quality. Players that can go win you a game. It's 0-0. Acosta picks up the ball 25 yards from goal, and then a couple 1-2s, a couple defenders left his way. Oh my God, how did he just get a one-on-one and score? Like, these are the ingredients to postseason success. And because of how good Columbus are, because of how good Miami are, and then you look at the LA teams in the West, and Cincy being without Miazga and having such huge question marks at center forward, nobody's looking at Cincy. And for me, I do believe that there is a genuine path to MLS Cup.
I agree with you. And I think I said it on the Cincy pod I did last week. I think that like they internally feel that, right?
Yeah.
And they feel that in the positive way of like, we've got a shot. We deserve to be on the field with any of these teams. We've got the best player on the field. We've got a match winner. And we've got a match winner and a guy, by the way, who elevates. Last year, playoffs, 2 goals, 2 assists for Lucho. We've seen it in Leagues Cup. We've seen it. He loves huge moments with this team. He elevates his game. He steps up. I think Celentano's another guy who this year was a good to positive goalkeeper. He's like Max Crepeau style, where it feels like he elevates to big games and he loves big moments. And most of the goals they've conceded in big games have been larger breakdowns rather than just his moments. So if you've got a shot stopper and you've got a goal scorer, like that's the formula, and you've got a lot up the spine. But I will say, and I think I said this on the show last week, I really like NYCFC's press right now. The way they pressure and fan out and are able to pick up the ball high up the field. It's what they did to Red Bulls in the Hudson River Derby, and were able to win that game, whatever we called it, the Blue Lagoon, the Blue Punch, whatever you wanted to call it, Curacao Blue, whatever you wanted to call that game. That's what they were able to do in that one, and this is a similar matchup, right? Because Cincinnati themselves are a transition team, themselves are a high-press team. And I think if you were able to funnel that ball towards Assad or Ian Murphy or whoever it is along that left side, and you're able to close things down quick enough, you can create some chances and you can get after this Cincinnati team. So I said it, I think tonight is this best night, and you're going to have more even games. And I think you're looking at 4 teams that could all get victories tonight, and I wouldn't be shocked and I wouldn't be surprised. And I think there's a formula for both these teams to get the win. Cincinnati at home, you'd expect, would get there. But I think this will be a 3-game series, and I think there's a lot of little pieces that could work for both these teams. One of the things I'm interested with NYCFC, because I always am, is what they choose to do at right back. I think Tavon Gurry is very good. I don't know that he creates a ton for you down that wing. And so do they decide, okay, we need to be safe against Assad coming down this wing and Orejano coming into this space, or do we want to try and get on the front foot here? And so that's one of those, some teams have those signifiers, right? If the LA Galaxy, you open up the lineup an hour before the game, Marco Royce is in there, that's one thing that's happening. This is a similar one that NYCFC kind of has those buttons they can push.
Yeah.
And then as we mentioned, I believe on Friday, I don't remember when, rumors connecting Nick Cushing going back to England to the Arsenal women's job. So how much does that affect this group? And he has struggled to get them up for the biggest games in his time there. His first postseason appearance, they haven't made deep Open Cup runs or Leagues Cup runs or anything really under him as well. So this is a big opportunity for him to prove that he's capable of doing it. The second game, Seattle-Houston, Kata in the chat says, playoffs have been one-sided. My hope is tonight Seattle versus Houston is a more back-and-forth game. I think Doyle said he got goosebumps thinking about the real estate battle that will occur in possession in this one. But I had this one tagged as one of, I think, the best series of the first round, and I'm excited for this one.
Do you also have goosebumps about who's going to stand on the blades of turf?
Chills. I'm not going to watch the game. I'm going to look at the possession stats, and I'm just going to watch the possession chat shift. Yeah. I just want to see it go from 55-45 to 54-46, and I just want to see that flow throughout the game.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this one. I think we've talked about it plenty, and so I don't have anything super new. It's like, can Houston, will Seattle's defense They had the fewest goals conceded in the league. They were awesome over the last half of the season, maybe 2/3, or whatever the timeline was there. Rusnak's been low-key really, really good. Remember when the free agent list came out? And we were talking about it's like, dude, he'd be great if you could sign him. Man, you probably could get him at max 10.
Yeah.
I don't think so anymore. I think that price went back up to DP, right? Like, good timing for him. Well done by him. But so, like, they have match winners in attack. I think Houston are going to control the possession and those blades of grass. I know that's taking away the chills and taking away the mystery there. But, like, how are they going to break down Seattle? What will that look like? Can Seattle find transition moments when Griffin Dorsey is overlapping Coco Carrasquilla as his like little half winger role? Like, can they will Jordan Morris drift to that side, or how will that go? I'm very, very curious.
Yeah.
Again, this is statistically the best defense in the league, and it's a Houston team that they dominate games, they control games with possession. Will they be able to create the chances against the league's best defense? Is going to be the story of the series.
Yep. Brian Schmetzer, contract extension. We hadn't mentioned it on this show yet. It was signed 3 or 4 days ago, I believe. So coming into this playoff round, we don't know years on coaches' contracts in Major League Soccer. That's not a thing that's announced. Yay, MLS.
Why? That's Seattle. I expect better from you. Announce the years of the contract.
Do
why
it.
Is this not? And to your point, why is this not mandated by MLS? One, it should be mandated by MLS, but two, it shouldn't have to be. You should just do it.
They just mandated the player years like 18 months ago at soonest. So we're just thankful for that at best. By the way, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, go do it. The salary tables are being updated this week with all of the new MLSPA news. So you will have the clear idea of where players sit in the roster spots, all that type of stuff coming up, and is the best way to follow teams as you go into the offseason. I say the Brian Schmetzer contract extension news in that it felt like coming towards the playoffs, this was potentially going to be a mandate on like, are you turning the page? Obviously, a few of the big names have left, and the pieces that are there, Stefan Fry, if he wants to keep playing, they're going to keep playing him, stuff like that. But it did feel like maybe we were coming to has this all reached its limit?
Yeah.
Right? Rusnak was brought in as a short-term real fix to win the CONCACAF Champions League in 2021 as a player who knew it, not this is the next 10 years of this club. I think with the Schmetzer contract, that puts a lot of that to sleep, which maybe makes this team play a little bit freer because Seattle's possession does not lead to chances. And that's like the problem for Seattle's. They have possession because they're talented and they have a great atmosphere at home. And teams just cede it to them. It's not as if Seattle has great ideas of like, we're going to use that possession to suck you in and move you around and open up chances. It almost hurts them at times at home. And so I didn't know how that would affect them and how they would continue forward. And your hope is this takes off some of the pressure in the bigger moment and allows the players to focus on things, and maybe they start to reorient themselves. Pedro de la Vega is a big part of that. If he can be healthy and play, like that's a big part of that as well. All right, let's move to Tuesday night here. We've got Columbus hosting the New York Red Bulls. Columbus obviously trying to go for a repeat and change history in Major League Soccer. It's not something we see very often, and I'm not sure it's something we thought would be possible in hand with a CONCACAF Champions Cup final run or a Leagues Cup final run. And so Columbus are trying to change what they're capable of. And also, you talk about future planning and all of that. There may not be a lot more time for this Columbus group as it's currently set up. L'Equipe in France, one of the reputable papers there, has said that Saint Etienne, who are currently in a relegation spot early on in Ligue 1, have tried to or reached out to make contact with Nancy about potentially taking over. I'm not saying this happens, but it goes to the point of like Wilfred Nancy is a very attractive coaching hire, and he will be a part of a lot of conversations over the next few months.
I agree. And a couple things on this report from L'Equipe. One, Saint Etienne have not fired their coach yet. And these things usually don't get out because like before the coach is fired. So that strikes you as a little odd. I'm not able to confirm or deny whether or not people have reached out to Nancy or Nancy's camp. What I can say, per sources, definitively, the Columbus crew have not been contacted. And again, usually they do make sure they're not going to ask the Columbus crew for permission to speak to Nancy if they don't know Nancy would be interested in speaking to them, right? So this is the usual thing of it, but obviously not something that would be happening during the playoffs. This is whatever. So again, maybe they are planning. They were circling when MLS Cup is, and like, all right, this manager has a couple more weeks left before we might have to make a change. But yeah, so for me, like, this is nothing that would be imminent. But to your larger point is the salient one that like this is going to happen. We're going to get Cucho rumors this winter. wasn't he connected to like Monterrey or something? Like
Yep.
when I was on my, that was a feeder.
Tom's like, if I didn't report it, I don't really care, and I wasn't
like
around,
somebody
so it
said it
didn't
in passing
happen.
in the chat, and I was like, what? When did this happen? But anyway, but like that's gonna happen, man. Like that's what success does, and these are again a coach like Nancy who helps develop players so well. Like he's could look to develop himself. So we'll see
Yeah.
where this goes. But as you say, like that creates some urgency, right? Like the windows are smaller and smaller with current iterations of teams in MLS in the world of global soccer. It's not you have a few years at your club and then you get bought. It's like, oh, you have 2 good months, bang! Like somebody needs to buy you before another team comes in, right? Like so that's just the nature of this. And maybe it is the last ride for this iteration of the Columbus Crew, but maybe it's not.
We saw this matchup on decision day. 2-0 lead for Columbus in the first half, 2-2 at the end of regular time after Red Bulls stormed back, and then the stoppage time winner for Columbus made it 3-2 in the end. It's what you'd expect, right? Red Bulls don't want the ball. They want to pressure, and Columbus want the ball, and they want you to come and pressure them. And the question is who bends and who breaks.
Is that a question?
It doesn't really feel that way. This, honestly, I think this, outside of the Atlanta-Miami series, I think most people have this as one of the most straightforward ones of like, Columbus are so good. The thing with Columbus is we've seen them do it at the high leverage moments. So there's like no lack of confidence that they will perform. You know, I say the abstract of like, oh, Red Bulls will press them, Columbus will try and play through it, who wins? And it's like, what we have seen over the last 2 years is when that happens, Columbus wins. That has been the scenario we have seen over and over and over again. So it'd be surprising if it doesn't happen again. The one wrinkle in there is Forsberg once again has come back, got 2 goals, I believe it was, against Columbus on decision day. That gives them a little bit of a special difference maker to say Columbus falls asleep, especially centrally. You know, they lose possession high and Red Bulls are able to pick it up and Forsberg can lead the break. He gets the goal. Now you have an opportunity to potentially play from a lead, but you'd expect Columbus to get the victory in this one, at least to start the series. And the final game of this first round, 9.5 years after it started, as Tom would like you to know, is RSL hosting Minnesota. This was one we were very excited about as well. 2 teams that have like found themselves over the course of the season. RSL obviously started hotter, sort of wavered in the middle and have come back on strong in a different way in the second half of the season. In the first half, it was expansive soccer and Chicho dropping in and dominating the game. And in the last segment of the year, it's been grit and strength and Diego Luna sort of being the match winner on top of all of that. And then a Minnesota team that under Eric Ramsey has made a ton of moves and changes and has found their feet towards the end of this season, but against lower quality competition for the most part where they've gotten their victories. And I think this one sits in a really fun spot for this series.
I completely agree. I think this is the hipsters round 1 series to watch. Like this is going to be, I think, really fun. These 2 teams they try to play expansive, but they both have flaws. Like I think that this is the essence of these round 1 series for what you want it to be, because I think it's going to be super competitive. I think both of these teams are going to try. Like again, Minnesota are here early. Real Salt Lake, you know, they were on before selling Andres Gomez and Chicho Arango getting suspended and then injured. Like they were on a trajectory to be challenging with LAFC, LA Galaxy at the top of the Western Conference. It's still been a very good year, and I can't wait to see who advances here.
Yeah, agreed. And I think this is one of those where it's like, if Yeboah elevates and plays the way he can play, that's a star in Major League Soccer that we're talking about going into next year. And Luna the same.
Point.
I know Luna has been in the conversations, but if Diego Luna finishes some of the chances he's finished on the national stage in this moment with everyone watching, that elevates him from fun young player to this is the guy everyone game plans around, and this is the guy that you throw on the billboard pregame and the opposing team puts on the match poster about who they're playing and all of that. That's really, I think, exciting and fun for these 2 teams. The midfield battle is going to be huge between these 2 sides. RSL are really good at killing the game there. And what I went back and watched the previous matchup, which was 0-0. So take what you will from that. A lot of RSL's chances, though, were blind balls over the top from right area of center back or central midfield into the left attack where Luna was sitting sort of behind whoever Minnesota decides to put out there at right back. It has been like Carlos Harvey in this weird slides in as a third center back and whoever plays right wing in Bongi or Sang Bin comes back and becomes a bit of a wing back. But with that movement, there's a little bit of a gap in that space right when you win the ball back. And RSL tried to be aggressive about that. So that's something to watch out for. The other is I'd expect Joseph Rosales on the other side to dominate this game. One of the regrets of my life was that I didn't have him on our underrated best 11 of my life. And I am sitting in an empty room like a crazy person. I have a lot of regrets, and that's one of the big ones of my life. Rosales is arguably the best crosser from the left back position in Major League Soccer right now. And right back has been a problem position. Andrew Brody hasn't been healthy or available. They played Philip Quinton there, and he's not naturally comfortable out there. So like that's a big area for this Minnesota team to try and take advantage of as well. And as you said, this is what we want from a first round series. This is what we want to see. All right. So that's our preview. We'll be back on Thursday to review it all and react to it. But we've got news to hit before we get out of here. You are reporting that Bruce Arena has taken a flight out west. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, Bruce Arena is in advanced conversations with the San Jose Earthquakes about their vacant head coaching position. I was told he flew into San Jose on Friday, and this wasn't another interview. This was with the idea of hammering out an agreement or filing the deal. I have not gotten an update since, but I will say that's where things stood as of Friday. This would be super interesting. This would be his first job since departing New England Revolution, shrouded in some secrecy. Myself and Pablo Mauro did some reporting on it of the insensitive comments that led to the investigation. He ended up resigning at the end of the investigation, and he had to be reinstated to MLS via a petition to Don Garber, which happened this year. Yeah, this would be very interesting. I think for me, this is more like Bruce Arena wants to coach again. Like Bruce Arena, if he left New England in different circumstances, I don't really think he's considering the San Jose Earthquakes. The other side of that, the optimistic side, is at the beginning of their process for head coaching search, they interviewed Greg Berhalter to Bruce Arena, Robin Fraser, Gio Savarese, interim Ian Russell as either all of the finalists or most of the finalists. And some of the wording that I was getting back was, again, believe it or not, totally fair to be cynical about this, given everything that this ownership group is for both the San Jose Earthquakes and the Oakland Athletics, was that more money was going to come or whatever, right? Like, do you care about this team? Were questions that were asked, right? Like, and for what it's worth, they're allegedly saying the right things. So I think that this would be a good hire by San Jose. I was surprised that there was I was reading some of the replies to my tweet and breaking the news of like, oh my God, like, just going with a retread. Or it's like, dude, have we forgotten that this guy has the most wins, the most MLS Cups, the most supporter shields, the most coach of the years in MLS history? And sure, whatever. Oh yeah, he won in 1998 or 96. Yeah, he also won the supporter shield with the Revolution. And that club was what we're viewing the Chicago Fire and what Greg Berhalter was walking into. That's what the Revs reviewed when Bruce Arena came in.
Yeah.
So when he went on administrative leave, they were on pace for 65 points. This team, largely with the same core, has been awful since then. So I'm just don't agree in any way that the game has passed him by or anything stupid. Like, yeah, he's older. Like, this is gonna be a different hire than if a 40-year-old like with developmental track, right? Like, but this would be an excellent hire for San Jose if they get it done.
Yeah, there's a lot in this. So I think to start with, you said it, and it's in your piece. The quote was inappropriate and insensitive remarks was why he was originally suspended in New England. He then resigned. He then petitioned to be let back into the league, and Commissioner Don Garber, they accepted him back into the league last year when his name started to bounce around as he wanted to work again. He's 73 years old. I'm not best friends with Bruce Arena. I don't know how much he's going to change as a human being. And like, there's the off-field side to look at this of like, should you be bringing a person like this into your organization? Has he changed? Does he understand what went wrong? Is he the right person to like lead a group of people? That's one conversation, and it should be had. The other, from the soccer point of view, it's a no-brainer, and I completely agree with you. When he got the Revs job, I thought the league had changed too much, and it was an unmitigated success. Like, I don't even think you can use that word. I think unmitigated is a negative. So whatever. It was a clear success. He signed Gustavo Bo like 6 hours after he took over as the New England Revolution head coach. And Gustavo Bo ended up being probably the best DP signing New England had made until Carlos Heel and all that and all those people. Well, Heel was first. That's true. Yeah. So, but the example in New England was he was able to bring in talent from around the world, right? He drafted Tejan Buchanan. Then they brought in Barrero, which was a great signing as well. Like they hit talent in multiple ways. DeJuan Jones and Brandon Bai out of the draft, but then also going out and purchasing Buxa and being able to like flip some of these roster spots. He showed that he could be competitive and bring people in from different backgrounds, which are a little bit different. And in the Carlos Heel thing, he showed that he could use the pieces that were there, which when you look at this team and Hernan Lopez and Christian Espinoza, you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like there is something there to work with. But he came to the New England Revolution because Robert Kraft, who is one of the most powerful people in sports in America and one of the biggest owners and a longtime MLS advocate, clearly came and said, tell me what you need and I'll give it to you.
Yep.
But Bruce Arena came to that job from a position of power. He had left the Galaxy. He was on his own terms, not coaching, and you had to coax him out. As you said, this is different. Bruce Arena wants back in the game to prove that he doesn't want his legacy left what it was with the Revs, which was as a human side and as a coaching side. That doesn't mean John Fisher has to give him as much as Robert Kraft had to give him to get him in the door. And so while I think Bruce Arena, what I saw with the Crafts and with the Revs was he is a big name to go into a rich person's room and say, give me the money, I promise you it'll be worth it. And that hasn't always been the case. That also doesn't mean San Jose has to promise him as much to get there. But the assumption being this team will be better next year. Like the floor with Bruce Arena as the coach is higher. I agree with you. The league has not passed him by. Yeah. He is capable of putting together coaching staffs and front offices around him, which is a little different now. He goes from being CSO to not CSO that have been competitive in modern Major League Soccer. And you'd expect him to do it once again here with this team.
And just to be super careful again, like the reporting, I've not reported that anything is agreed or done. So again, this is where it's trending. But again, I just making sure for people who are listening to this, nothing is done yet.
We can confirm that flights were people were on flights. Can we track planes?
I didn't track. I can tell you via sources he was in San Jose on Friday.
Okay. I'll get on American Airlines later and see where flights were and what time do they fly out of Islip?
Imagine Bruce in a middle seat and you just get onto it. Like what? He's definitely a guy who's taking like elbows out. These are mine. Screw you.
I think it was the Galaxy that were quoted back in the day when the teams traveled commercial of like, we always show up in our training, our uniforms, and people always ask like, what are you? Are you a cheerleading group? Are you guys raising money? Are you a Boy Scout group? So Bruce was the one leading them through the airports, like something out of a Mighty Ducks video as well. The other piece of news, which you reported and then confirmed by themselves, Austin FC, is that Nico Estevez is going to take over as the second ever head coach of Austin FC. So a big move. Rodolfo Burrell took over as CSO last year. Yep. Let Josh Wolf go with one game left to play this season, and then had an interview process. I saw in the Austin FC fan conversations a lot of Burrell's quote, "You'd be shocked by the people who are interested in this job," which they've taken in a different direction now that it's been announced, which has been really funny to watch. But Nico Estevez, at 44 years old, takes over his second head coaching job in Major League Soccer. So he's from Valencia, Spain originally. He originally came to the U.S. in 2014 to work under Greg Berhalter as the director of methodology at Columbus Crew, then became an assistant coach, followed Greg to the national team as an assistant coach with the U.S. men's national team, and then left there to take over the FC Dallas head coaching job, which he held for 2.5 seasons, roughly. His first year was a 20-point increase in 2022, which is the largest jump in FC Dallas history. They made the playoffs in 22 and 23, and then he was fired in 2024. At the time, he was 3-8-5. Overall, he had a 36% win percentage with Dallas, and Josh Wolf leaves Austin with a 33.8% win percentage just down the road. So you don't have to relearn Texas, as Burrell said. What did you make of as this sort of came about, this being the name and sort of this decision?
Interesting. Like when I was reporting on this, like the first words like, yo, like Nico Estevez in Austin. I didn't know if it was a joke. I didn't know, or like, is that real? Like, what do you, is this, like, no, like it's happening. Like, I was like, really? Okay. Like, let me try to track this down. So the positives are he and Burrell clearly see the game similar ways, right? Like, one of the things that I keep coming back to, Burrell talking about Josh Wolf when he took over, he goes, I would not have taken this job if I was not aligned with Josh Wolf and his game model, the way he sees the game, the way we see the game, right? Like, so Nico Estevez, a lot of the same background as Josh Wolf. They were assistants together.
Yeah.
Believe in both Columbus and the national team.
Yep.
Or I don't exactly know what the time it was, but like Greg Berhalter coaching tree. They both have similar game models. So that's like, so again, that's how Burrell clearly sees the vision of this team. The negatives are he might be Josh Wolf 2.0. Like, if you're a fan, that's probably worried. Like, there was I forget if this was a message in the Discord or a tweet. I believe that it was something like that, where someone was like, Dallas was one of the very few teams we finished ahead of this year, and they fired this guy. Like, so that's a little tough. And like, again, you need to be brave to be like, hey, if I think this is the guy, this is the guy, right? Like, I think that they were aware this wasn't going to be the most popular decision, right? Like, again, because he was their rivals coach. He comes from the same tree as Josh Wolf did, right? There are a lot of similarities there. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen. What he needs to do is unlock, like, so the defensive pieces in this group going to be better than what he had in his final season with Dallas. And I genuinely believe that Nico Estevez did not want to play the boring, slow, conservative soccer that he ended up the last half year before Dallas parted ways with him. I think that was job preservation mode, and I want to play more expansive. I can't. Yeah, I cannot with this back line and the midfield that we have right now. So I don't think that that's indicative of what Nico Estevez is or wants to be as a head coach. So I think that would be one of the optimistic views. But it never felt like he quite unlocked the attack in Dallas, and that is number one priority here with Austin. What is the best way for Bukhari, Driussi, Diego Rubio, who just signed a contract extension? Is there a DP number 9 coming in? Or how do you rework defensive midfield, stuff like that? Like, these are the questions. For me, it's more about, can you prove that your theory, your game model, what you want it to be, that translates to the pitch and that translates to attractive soccer and winning games? Yeah. I think it can, but I understand the pessimism.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with the coaching hire stuff, again, you go back to sort of what we talked about with Bobby of like the options and the ID player people and all of that. I think you also have to remember, like, there's a decent amount of these CSOs who basically are coaching the team or want to. Like, they want the team to play the way they want it to play and be set up. They're not looking for the coach to come in and have the ideas. And so you look at a setup here where Rodolfo Borrell's bringing someone in who's got experience running locker rooms, who understands Major League Soccer, and who has the same background from Spain as he does. Like, that seems pretty cut and dry, clean to say, like, yeah, this is someone who's going to come and take my players and put them in the system I want them to play and be competitive. Rodolfo Borrell's not going to be in training every day. He's not setting the lineup. But, like, he has the idea of what he wants the club to be and that team to be, and he wants Nico Estevez to sit in that. And so for all of those reasons, it makes sense. They're also the same reasons that if you're an Austin fan, you could be worried, because what if Burrell's wrong? You don't have a no person in the room then, right? You don't have a coach who's saying like, this doesn't make sense. This isn't the way it runs. You're kind of hiring a yes person. But we have seen now over the last few years, this sort of movement towards coaches who have MLS experience, because it's a safe hire to say like, well, of course, like if it goes wrong, Burrell's like, what do you want from me? I hired a guy who made the playoffs in 2 of the 3 years he's coached in Major League Soccer and was an assistant with the U.S. men's national team. Like, that's the resume that's easy to put up to an ownership group above you and say, like, we hired the right guy, it just didn't go well, or whatever you want to say after that. But I can understand from an Austin fan point of view that it doesn't feel ambitious or different. I mean, you're literally hiring the guy who lost to your team in the Western Conference semifinals 2 years ago, who is sitting behind you in the standings when he got fired and ended up his team behind you in the standings as well from right down the street. But I do think the job is a little bit different between the two teams. Austin is trying to be more of a finished product and be competitive, where Dallas wants to sell and move players. Austin hasn't done that yet. They're not connected as much to their academy. And they're going to try and do it with the Bukaris of the world, of like younger signings that maybe they can move and flip later. But that's not really the reality of this team. They're trying to win, and they think Nico Estevez can do that. It is not an inspiring move. You don't feel inspired, but this is sort of the names that you see moved around in this space. And I think that's what we're feeling from a lot of Austin fans. They, to the point of like Burrell's the decision maker. Before this happened, they've already extended 4 players: Diego Rubio, Owen Wolf, Hodder Oberon, and Brendan Hines-Ike. Like, this is Burrell's roster. It's his squad. Yep. It's his team. And that's why you go about making these moves. They already signed Bukari as a DP in the summer. And so, like, the move's already there. It's not Estevez coming and saying, these are the guys I need. It's like, here's the guys you get, and this is how we think it'll work. And like, you go out and start to execute that going forward. Any other final thoughts?
That's all I got.
All right. We're going to be back on Thursday. A lot more playoff games to be played. I'm very excited. I thought the games on Sunday were fun. Yep. I thought overall Orlando, Charlotte, and Vancouver LAFC, they were fun. They were competitive. They felt like they mattered. And I thought we saw a better level of play or bite to the games. And I expect to see that again over the next 4 games and then going into it. One little note, we got a question in the Discord about the reports coming out about college soccer and the readjustments. I talked about college soccer a bunch when the show started, trying to put together a feature and a piece. So I'm going to try and do some coverage around that. This week, we obviously won't have a show on Tuesday because we did the show today. We'll be back on Thursday for MLS coverage. Wednesday, Jordan Angeli to do NWSL and the U.S. Women's National Team, coming off so far the 2 wins against Iceland, heading into the game against Argentina, and the final game of the regular season there. The playoffs resuming Friday in Major League Soccer and then starting a week later in NWSL. All right. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Thank you everyone who was in the chat to watch live. Anyone listening on the podcast, thank you for supporting us as well. Another fun week last week of coverage. I'm excited once again for this week coming up. Tom, thank you to you for being here and all your scoops. And we'll talk to you all again very, very soon. Hang on one second.